live service games are a consistent debate, but before we get to that debate, I was supposed to do this during a Call of Duty stream that didn't happen because there was a massive update. I wasn't going to have time to do that stream before the debate, but we want to make sure and let you know about Into the AM doing a Black Friday sale starting today, November 10th until November the 30th. This stream is not sponsored by Into the AM, but they do send me shirts, and we do get a kickback. You can use my code Lono, or you can go to intotheam.com/Lono. You will get my discount on top of the 30% or up to 80% off site-wide. So thank you so much for supporting that. Check that out. Let's get to the show, though. Appreciate Into the AM working with us, and their shirts are fantastic. But also who's fantastic is 30 and So Gaming, and we have him on weekly for this discussion. And this is always such a hot debate, and now we have so many companies weighing in on live service, their plans for live service. They're either scaling back or doubling down. And I wanted to discuss this with Mike because we have done shows for a very long time together about one live service game in particular, and we have different thoughts and opinions on them. And we're going to walk through a couple of things. Yeah, imagine that. If you guys missed our show where we discussed, it was a couple of weeks ago, the one where the deal got approved with Activision Blizzard. That was a great episode. A lot of people responded positively to that episode because there was a lot of back and forth and disagreement. So check that one out if you missed it. Make sure if you are here live, you smash that like button. And that way you can also hit subscribe and talk into the chat. And join the conversation. We will try to respond to chat. You can do super chats. You can do gifteds. You can do all those things while we're having this show. We're going to walk through the fact that Sony has confirmed it's delayed half of its 12 planned live service games. Pretty much right on target. When I told people I did not think we were going to get all 12 games by 2026, I said I think we'd get about 4. Sounds like we're going to get a little bit more than that, but we're still going to get significantly less. We're going to get about 6. And then the other 6 are unknown. So we're going to take a look at those comments as well as comments from Herman Hulst. Also, Warner Brothers seemingly wanting to really increase its focus on live service games. Many people shocked by that given the negative reception to Kill the Justice League. And then last but certainly not least, Rockstar shocking the world with a tweet, an announcement about an announcement because, you know, nothing's a secret anymore. So nothing is a surprise anymore. We can maybe even talk about that.
Yeah, we can. Go.
The meta of insiders and leakers completely removing all surprises or excitement anymore. But let's just start with, I want to start with this Sony thing. Because prior to the Bungie thing that we covered, there was a lot of rumors swirling that PlayStation was in trouble. Jim Ryan was asked to leave because of his focus on live service, and the situation with Bungie, well, that's all on Sony. That all turned out to be completely false, and I believe even what we're going to look at today furthers the proof that PlayStation is not backing away from what many people have dubbed Jim Ryan's plan. I don't know if it was his plan. I believe this is a corporate-level decision that's been made by multiple companies. They see a lot of money in live service. And when you heard, let's just start here before we look at what they said. When you heard that PlayStation wanted to have 12 live service games by 2026, what was your first thought on that as far as the types of games, the number of games, that it seemed very ambitious?
So in the beginning, before they even announced the live service games, I said that Sony, because of even before Activision was on the table with Microsoft, I said that Sony has to start adjusting and adapting because of Game Pass, right? So they had to get their games on PC and whatnot, and they've done all those things, right? And I said that they're probably going to have to do some more live service games, and since then they put MLB The Show over on Xbox, and it's out on more platforms now. So when they announced the 12, I was like, whoa. I was like, how is this going to work? And this is the initial when they first said it, where they said, I think 10 before they raised it to 12. They said 10 by 2026, I believe is what the original story was, right?
Yeah, and it was like, 10.
And I was like, how are they going to do this considering, and then later they said 60% and they're putting towards the budget. I was like, why is Sony doing this? I said, because they're known for their first like Uncharted and Last of Us and God of War and Spider-Man. They're known for these third person action adventure, really good, sell, 5, 10, 15 million copies of these games. And that's what they're known for. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they're like, we're going to put our hat in the ring with live service games. I was like, the quality's got to go down somewhere, right? If it's the first party titles, studios, I should say, not titles. If it's the first party studios working on these live service games, something's got to give, right? They have to take away from the single player aspect of it and kind of maybe give you that. And I know people are going to take this out of context, but maybe give you that Miles Morales content instead of the original Spider-Man content. You know what I'm saying? And sort of like the rumors that are going on now with the potential God of War DLC, or with Atreus, that's his name, right?
Atreus.
I
thought you said a churro. I was like, that sounds great.
Churro. Atreus, where it might be a big game, but not a full game, right? Because they have to give to go do something else. Now, obviously, if it's third-party titles or third-party studios making the live service games for them, then that's a different story. But still, 2 years to push these guys out, they're going to come out. They're not going to have the quality, whatever that means, that they're known for.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking on that, this is where this news comes from. The COO and CFO, Hiroki Totoki, said that they're going to be altering course here a little bit, and said that of the 12 titles, 6 will be released by fiscal year 25. That's our current plan. As for the remaining 6 titles, we are still working on that. I'm of the opinion that some of those are probably on the dock. Like, they might get canceled, because I don't know if they're exactly gung-ho about pushing something out just for the sake of it. This is why they brought in Bungie. This is said that, they're doing rigorous portfolio reviews here. Things are getting scaled back. We reported this week that the Last of Us Factions game is apparently, according to the director, he's still working on it. But for all we know, they really scaled back. Now, they go on to say, Hiroki Totoki goes on to say, that's I love the name. It's so fun to say. That's the total number of live service and multiplayer titles and mid to long term we want to push this kind of service, and that's the unchanged policy of the company. So again, pushing back against the notion this was somehow a Jim Ryan thing, everybody's glad that he's gone. He's like, no, this is the unchanged policy. Like, we want to push multiplayer titles mid to long term. We want to push this kind of service. Now, he goes on to say also that it's not like we stick to certain titles, but game quality should be the most important thing. This is the company that's notorious for saying we cancel games all the time. We don't want to push something out if it's bad. So hearing this, and also hearing that there were studios that were either hesitant or not thrilled about having to do live service games. Like, let's just take Guerrilla, for example. We know their game, Horizon, they're working on a multiplayer version. And with what we learned about ZeniMax essentially telling Arcane, hey, we want a multiplayer game, and Arcane was like, that's not really what we do. We don't really have the bandwidth. And then ZeniMax, somewhere along the lines, it was either ZeniMax or Arcane leadership, somebody drops the ball and doesn't communicate that, and then they have a game that they don't even want to ship. And obviously, we don't want studios under Sony going through the same thing, because people see dollar signs in live service, and they start telling studios that are great at making single-player games, like, hey, can you start kicking out some live service titles? Do you have concerns that that's what's going on here, or do you think this is just part of the evolution of gaming? Like, where do you land on? You got a lot of studios here that don't really do live service, and they're worried about quality. They don't want to push them out if they're not good.
Well, there was I don't know if it's official, but we did see rumors of people, because of Connie Booth leaving and other studios that don't want to work on multiplayer titles. They just want to stick with the single player titles. So I think this does hurt them. I mean, obviously, as a Sony, if you're a Sony fan out there, I know everyone likes to be like, Sony does no wrong, right? And I think this is one of the steps in the wrong direction, because I don't think live service is the answer for Sony. I do believe that they'll be fine, because they'll see what sticks and they'll put the 6 games out there, and maybe one of them succeeds, right? Maybe one of them succeeds. But I don't think this is like the make or break, like Sony does these live service and they're all of a sudden they're going to fall as a company, right? I do believe, though, that, like I said before, it's a give and take. Like, if you're going to do live service games, something is going to falter on the other end of the first party single player games that you're pushing towards. Now, someone says that, I'm trying to forget where they said it, but they said that the quality or whatever of the games, it doesn't matter if it's a smaller game, but it kind of does, right? If they're making smaller games, that means because of the live service games that are happening, they have to pull from the studios to not work on a game as long or with as many people. Or so when they say quality, that's going to happen, what does that mean? Does that mean, okay, quality story, quality graphics, quality gameplay? Does it mean all of it quality? Is it just a substandard par, like what Phil Spencer said? You know, we shoot for those like mid 80s. You know what I mean? Like type of quality. Like what's the quality?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I am a little surprised that that they're pushing. At least they're going 6, but it's still not good. You know, they're still not. I still don't think the live service is the answer for Sony. But they have to make money somehow, and with the game. Blowing up for $200 million. Like we know Last of Us was like 220 and Horizon was like 208 or something like that. I forget what it was, but they were like $200 million budgets and they're pumping them out every 4 years. They got to bring in more money now, right?
That would be the concern. But I think maybe my pushback is I see a lot of people saying what you're saying. Like I see very, very big PlayStation fans saying they think this is a mistake. Stop. Don't do live service. Like they're glad that they're trimming down. Some of them are like, just cancel them. Don't do them. And what I want to say to them, and even kind of what you just said, if we look at the actual webcast from earlier this year, Sony is increasing funding for their traditional games higher than it's ever been. And then they're also allotting a whole chunk on the bar to live service. So I don't know if this is just so like such this sharp dichotomy of like, well, they're going to take away from traditional. They're actually going to spend more on traditional, what works for them. We know what works for them. They're going to spend more on that than they ever have. But then half of the bar is live service. They're throwing tons of money at this. And I would say they're doing what everybody else is doing. Everybody sees this pie and they're like, we have got to get games out there that people engage with at this level, the ongoing game. Right. And I know people are like, their microtransactions are terrible. It's predatory. There are plenty of ongoing games that I don't think do that. I think there are a handful of games that are showing us there is good ways of doing ongoing live service. I think up to now, Destiny has been a great model for microtransactions. I don't think they've ever crossed any of the lines that we would call bad practices or predatory. Like 80% of the items in their store are earnable. They let you know what's not earnable. They give you a currency in the game to use in their store fairly regularly. I feel like they've always done a good job. Now, they've kind of drifted into some of the more bad practices, and I think it bit them for doing that. But I think ESO is a good example. I think Diablo 4 is obviously trying to get back on track, but I think Diablo 3 was a great example of an ongoing live service game that treated people well. Say what you want about Fortnite. It's always been battle passes and vanity items. It's a game you don't have to spend $1 in, and it's been very successful. I don't know what the microtransactions look like in Warzone and Apex. I've never seen significant criticism there. Again, they're super popular, so if the market bears it. So I do think sometimes we look at the worst offenders and think, well, all live service games are going to be like this. So, but my main issue is I just want to push back on the notion that like this is somehow going to take away from the good single player games, because they're increasing funding across the board for all PlayStation games going forward, not just live service.
Right. And they also do have live service games out right now. Like MLB The Show is out there. Now, MLB The Show has been around for what a decade, or more. And it was only solely on PlayStation, and they sold the packs and the cards and the different players that you can do for your ultimate team. It's not called Ultimate Team, but you know what I'm talking about. You can make your own team and stuff like that. Chat, correct me what the actual name is for MLB The Show. But then they also have Gran Turismo, where they sell the live service, like the car packs and stuff that come in. Then I would assume Helldivers is going to be a live service game. We don't really know too much about it yet.
Everybody's assuming that it is that it's live service.
And
I'm like, hopefully, because it looks like it would work as a live service game.
Then you have Final Fantasy 14, right? That's a live service game. It's an MMO, but that's a live service game. And then you have Genshin Impact, right, which is PC and PlayStation and mobile, right? So they're making money from there. So I haven't looked at PlayStation's books personally, so I don't know if they look at those games that I just named and said, wow, we are just selling so many microtransactions from this, and this is why they're diving into 6 more games. It's the 6 more games in the short amount of time,
right,
that I'm worried about, right? It's not about just the 6 live service games. It's the 6 live service games that they're just tossing out the door in the next 2 years that I'm a little concerned about. because time is time, right?
Sure.
Do they have enough time to make those bake and get them out where they are quality and they're good games? And I said this last night on my podcast. I almost feel like when you bring out live service games, you can't just dump 6 games out within a 3-month period of time, right? You have to put one out, see what happens, see if it works, adjust, and then make it. I look at it like when you play Battlefield or Call of Duty, and you play like Conquest, and you see the whole group of people going to like flag A, and then they go to flag B, and then they go to flag C. That's the way I picture people playing live service games. Like the whole group goes to the first flag, and they're like, oh, I like this. And then a couple people just hang back and play that, while the whole massive rest of the group goes to the next live service game, which is flag B, right? That's the way I picture it in my head. And I don't think you're going to have these live service games. I mean, look at them. How many live service games have perished in the last 2 years, right? They don't have enough. There's not enough gamers out there and the longevity of these, they just die off. They're good for short periods of time,
right?
Make the money right when they come out, and then people get tired of them, and then they move on to the next one.
Yeah. Well, there's a handful of things I want to say. First, I do want to say, you mentioned Gran Turismo 7. I think that is such a good example of how the consumer can push back against bad practices, because GT7 launched, they were doing stuff with the micros that everybody hated, and it got ripped. Like, if you go look at the Metacritic, the score is low. I've always said that's one of the few times that's deserved. A lot of the times you get a low user score on Metacritic, it's hard to know if it's not being review bombed, they don't verify purchase. I'm like, no, this is one of the times where the community spoke out and said, this is bad. And they walked it all back, switched it all, changed it all. They just recently pushed out this great update. Everybody's saying, like, oh, look at all the stuff they just gave us. Its user score through the PlayStation Store is great, right? It's really high because they responded to what the community said. And that's why I've always said we need to be careful not to act like, yeah, every game's just going to come out and be awful. I think the games that have tried to come out and are just straight awful with their format or it's super thin, they've not worked. They failed. Like, you're not gonna pull the wool over people's eyes anymore because there's too many live service games out now, like you said. Which is why the second thing I want to say is, I think there's going to be a growing need, a need that I feel Bungie's meeting for PlayStation, but I think a need of essentially like live service consultation, because so many of these developers can build maps and really fun content loops, but they have no idea how to get beyond that. I said this the other day. I think it's going to be one of the new things you guys hear me say a lot is that most development companies can answer all the technical questions. What is this game? What am I doing? How much content are you going to deliver? But the question about how are you going to get people to play this game for months and years at a time, those are not technical questions or technical answers. They are psychological questions with psychological answers. And I don't think a lot of development studios are even remotely equipped to consider or answer those questions. Bungie is, because Bungie had like a behavioral brain scientist who helped them with Destiny. John, I believe his name was John Hobson. So it's like
that's why they're putting them in as the gatekeeper to see what games are good and not good.
That's right. And so I think there's another evolution of live service, and I do think PlayStation had the right idea. Now, I don't know if it's going to pay off, because even Bungie and even Destiny seems to be hitting a bit of a, like, is this car going to run out of gas? Like, it seems as though the next DLC is, we've said this many times, like, is this make or break? This might actually be one of those times. This might be a genuine make or break moment for Destiny. With a 45% miss of revenue targets, it feels like their back is against the wall. So even they might be saying, look, man, your average life cycle for a live service game has to be a reasonable expectation. Maybe the average live service game should set its sights on lasting for 1 to 3 years, and look to recoup costs and generate profit within those 3 years. Like, if you think automatically, like, yeah, we're going to be the next 5 to 10 year game, well, hang on now, let's slow down. So I think there's going to have to be an evolution of the actual life expectancy of a live service game. But I also wonder if there needs to be another evolution. And that's the idea that I think it was Matt Piscatella, I think that's his name on Twitter. I think he said he calls these black hole games, where they demand everything from you. What if that's a foundational mistake? That games should be like, you can have an ongoing live service game that doesn't require you to basically work like it's a job. I saw a short video of a guy that was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm home from my real job. I'm going to do my other job." He's like, "What's that?" He's like, "Oh, I got to do my dailies in this game, my bounties in this game, my this, da. He starts listing all these things, right?
Yeah.
And it's his other job.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Yeah. And I wonder if that's the next evolution for live service games, is letting go of the idea that you have to keep people in the game for that much time, but you can healthily keep them coming back in a rhythmic way where you're making money from them, but they don't feel as if they're sort of chained to the game. Now, that could pose significant challenges, because when you stop playing a game, there's probably like mathematical probabilities, like it's less likely you're going to come back after certain periods of time of non-play.
Well, right. Well, you also have to look at it. This is too big box who thinks I don't know how video games work, where if you have, let's say, 10 million people that are fans of live service games, and I put the first game out, and everyone's like, "Oh, I like live service games," but that game doesn't hit with half of those people, right? Because maybe it's a car game, and everyone's like, "Oh, I like car games. Oh, it's a live service car game." So 10 million people try it out, but only 2 million people stay. Now, those 2 million people that stay with that particular game, they have to have a percentage high enough so they're making money. Otherwise, what's the point of a live service game, right? That's the whole point, to keep people playing and also spending money. If they're not spending money, it's a failure, okay? It's not the old school buy the game, make a game, sell a game. It's put a game out there and get people to constantly come back and spend $5, $10, $15, $20, and make it a bigger chunk, right? So now you have 8 million people left over, and now you have to make another game. Well, those 8 million people didn't like the car game. Maybe they'll like a live service shooter game. And everyone's like, "Oh, 8 million people go over to the shooter game," and we're like, "I don't really like this. There's another shooter game I can play." And then 2 million people stay to do their chore list for the live service game. Now you only have 6 million people left over to do the other live service games that they weren't interested in the first 2 live service games. Then you have people that were on the first 2 live service games that are now getting bored of those live service games. And like, "Come on, what's the next live service game? I'm looking for what burn and turn," right?
Right.
I put a meme in my Discord. I feel like live service games are feed me, Seymour. Feed me, right? It's the big Venus flytrap that's just there, that just wants to keep eating and eating, because players just want to keep playing a game, but they don't know why they want to play the game. They just want to keep playing the game. But then the game gets bored, when they see that wizard behind the curtain, they're like, I don't want to do the chore list over here anymore. I want to go do the chore list at the other live service game that I have to do, right? And that's the trick. That's the balance of when they make these live service games. They have to make them where they're addictive and fun to play. And at the same time, they have to also have a niche group that likes that exact live service game. If it's a sports game, if it's a first-person shooter game, if it's a horror game, whatever it is, if it's an IP that you like a Marvel or a Transformers or a Star Wars, they have to do all of this ahead of time. They're not just going to make, no one knows this IP, let's make it a live service game and see what sticks. That's not what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in chat are saying, like even this person right now saying games as a service hasn't worked in a long time because they don't even finish the game before launch. Again, I think that just simply isn't true. We can demonstrate that there's a lot of successful live service games, which is one of the reasons that these companies are spending a lot of money. They want to get those players. And I think one of the things that PlayStation said in one of the interviews they did on this subject is that they were going to go for very different styles of games, genres, audiences, because they might be able to hook a crowd that is regularly coming back into Gran Turismo 7 and spending money, but they're not going to get me. And if Diablo 4 would have given me the rhythms and the content that I was enjoying, because a lot of us fell off with Diablo 4, but let's imagine that wouldn't have happened. Well, Gran Turismo 7 is not a threat to my enjoyment of Diablo 4 because it's a game I would never touch.
Right.
And we know this game Foam Stars is coming out from Square, where
Foam Stars, that's the game right there.
Well, the feedback has been like overwhelmingly positive. People are like, "Yo, don't sleep on this game. This game's kind of fun," right? Like people are saying it's pretty cool. And if we look at the success of Splatoon, we don't dismissing a game like this is I wouldn't dismiss this game, right? I know people like they write it off. Anytime I bring up Foam Stars, they're like, "Look at this idiot thinking Foam Stars is going to be good." And I'm like, I'm not even the kind of guy that would play it, but I'm here to tell you there's a potential really big audience that might, of
course there is.
I don't play Splatoon. Me not playing Splatoon doesn't keep it from being massively successful.
Hot Asian women in soap. I mean,
oh, it's not that kind of game. Come on.
Come on.
In any case, I think this subject is a challenge for companies that don't have the expertise. And Herman Hulst spoke on this earlier this year about Bungie specifically. And he said the learnings from Bungie have been very substantial in many areas. Of course, when you're developing live service titles, you require capabilities that you don't have when you're working on single-player, narrative-driven games. And these capabilities that we've set up inside PlayStation Studios have been helped and guided by Bungie. We're also more deeply understanding what success means in live service. Historically, our games always worked towards an end. And this is a large cultural shift. The launch of a game is just the beginning, and it comes with a whole set of different key performance indicators. Now, that I think is where my concern comes from, is he's talking about a large cultural shift. It's one thing to give insight and tools to these companies, but if their heart isn't in it, then that would be where I would say, I don't want you doing it. I don't want you taking studios who don't want to have the culture shift. They don't want to pivot to live service. And right now, the only one we know that was being made voluntarily before all this happened was the Last of Us Factions 2. And that is now just currently completely up in the air. I've got people telling me that this is ridiculous. You're just making stuff up. Like, you're saying it's canceled. I'm like, I'm not saying it's canceled. It's been put on ice. I've got people telling me, no, that thing's coming out next year. This is just a bunch of propaganda. I'm like, I don't see why anybody would think that game's coming out anytime soon. Like, they laid off 25 quality assurance contractors. They shifted people off the project to other projects. It's like, for all intents and purposes, this is a reboot. They've restarted. Like, they've stripped this thing down to the studs, and they're starting over. With Bungie's input, it's like, we didn't consider any of the things that you're saying. If that's the case, where do you see some of these IPs landing then? Like, if the studios don't want to make them, if they've got to lean on Bungie so much, where do you find a lot of these games landing? Do you think they get canceled? Do they come out? Do they accept the cultural shift? Because if they've been making single-player games this long, this could be an internal point of tension at PlayStation Studios.
I mean, if they wanted to make 12 by 2026, and now they're making 6 by 2026, so obviously the 6 that are coming out are going to be testing the waters. And if they, let's say, I say one of the 6 will succeed, the other 5 will go to the wayside. But if they get 2, right, that whatever success means to them, right, if whatever the budgets are, and then how much they make off of what they've spent, you know, how business runs. But if 2 of them are successful, or like 1 makes it and 2 of the remaining 6 kind of like skirting by, then I think they move forward with the other 6. But if 1 makes it and the other 5 just kind of go to the wayside, that's when they do a shift change. They're like, let's not do 6. Let's only bring out another like 1 or 2 and see what those do. And again, that goes back to my last point of, it all depends on what the IP is, right? If it's something that people are interested in, for instance, Last of Us Factions, that's a well-known IP, very popular, one of the biggest titles ever selling for PlayStation. They're like, oh, well, let's make a multiplayer live action or live service game with this. That'll sell because people are interested in the Last of Us world, right? Same with Horizon. People like the IP, so they'll make that. Maybe they'll do something for God of War. Maybe they'll do something for one of the other IPs that they're running. But if it's a brand new game, like Foam Stars, if it is a live service game, I would assume, right? Mm-hmm. People are like, well, it's a brand new IP. Do we have enough people that are interested in this? And that's the question that only Sony can answer. Is the 6 that are in the chamber popular enough, but they're not completely wasting all their good IPs first, because then you'll have nothing on the other second half of the 6 games that are postponed, right? So you have to have a good foundation of IPs that people are interested in to bring out for those 6 to make it successful to work on the next 6. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think one of the reasons that everybody thinks like, well, these are all just going to fail, is I do think there is some, maybe it's foolhardy, maybe it's naive to think that you can take a game mode and turn it into a live service game. That was always my concern with the Last of Us 2 factions. That was my concern with the Division Wildlands. Or I'm sorry, the Division Heartland. Sorry. Ghost Recon Wildlands, the Division Heartland. The Division Heartland was basically survival from the Division 1. And I was like, how's that going to work? Like, who's going to play that for extended periods of time as a game, not like as a mode? Because I know Battle Royale is basically a mode, but it's so big in scope that it doesn't feel like a mode. It's not like you're playing Capture the Flag or Team Deathmatch where you feel like you're kind of in a meat grinder. It becomes static. One game to the next doesn't feel that different than the previous. And, Battle Royale creates this large scope of possibilities where no game really feels, the same. And then they're changing the map. They're changing the weapons, all these things. Outside of Battle Royales, I've not seen a whole lot of evidence of we're just going to take a mode and that's the game. Like, that was my concern with the Last of Us factions. I was like, I know that you guys probably made a pretty cool mode. I read the descriptions. People always tell me how popular it was. I guess right now you can still play the original Last of Us factions and you'll get full lobbies like that. I'm like, that's crazy. I remember going back to old Quake servers and finding people still playing Quake 3. Right. It's like, gee, many people are really loyal. But that doesn't mean that you can turn it into a live service game. Correct. Most of the successful live service games that we mentioned that aren't like a mode are games that have so much to do, whether it's Destiny, you said Final Fantasy XIV, I said ESO. Right. Some people have put No Man's Sky in chat. I'm like, that's a very different format, what they've done. They don't charge for anything. They just charge for the base game. There's how many people are working on that game? Like maybe double digits, 10.
I think it's like 20. I think it's 20 or 22.
Oh, 20. Yeah. So they're in the low double digits. They're somewhere in 10 or 20 employees.
That's for the whole company of Hello Games, though.
Right. So their operating costs are a lot lower. I think that game has a built-in elasticity. Like, they can do a lot with it. So, a lot of games, I don't think could do that. I don't think you could have a game that's like, we're not going to charge for anything. You just have to buy the original game. I don't know if that would be enough to keep the operating costs of, once you get to the size of a Bungie, they can't do that. They need to have layers of monetization for just the bandwidth that goes into supporting the game and keeping it going. And I think when we look at that under the microscope and we say, okay, there are games that are pulling this off, but it's not a mode. That's where I think Bungie's expertise is going to come in handy. Because Holst goes on to say, we also work with Bungie on a pretty rigorous portfolio review process that we apply to all 12 live service titles that we have in production. And these are just brief examples of some of the learnings that we have gained from working with Bungie. Why do you think so many people are opposed to this idea? I see people get very angry about this. They're like, Bungie has no right to say anything. Naughty Dog, that's just disrespectful. Naughty Dog should not have to answer to Bungie. And I'm like, this is literally why Sony didn't buy Bungie for Destiny. Right. That's not why they bought
$3.7 billion. So because they're one of the, if not the best, regardless of what you think of Bungie or Destiny, right? Their live service game has been around for 10 years, right? Their model has been around for 10 years and successful. Yeah, it almost went down, right? But it's still around. So by default, they're the best in the industry for live service games, right? For this particular type of game. So yeah, they paid $3.7 billion to go, hey, we need that secret sauce, that recipe that you have. Can you share it with us? Because we're looking to make 12 live service games for PlayStation, right? And it's not just for PlayStation. I want to make it clear that obviously all the games they're making are going to be third party or out for all consoles. I shouldn't say third party. First party, third party game companies are making games that are live service that are going to go across all platforms because PlayStation needs as many people as possible to try these games out. That's how live service games work.
Right. I mean, someone in chat says, I love Sony, but Bungie is still a bad buy. The nerve that they can think that they can be independent and not at least make games exclusive. But that they were bought for a very particular purpose. If PlayStation wanted exclusives out of Bungie, they would have negotiated that or not bought them. They bought them for a very, very specific purpose. I think that is often really lost. I do think some people are a little bit too, I think maybe you're too big of a fan of PlayStation or PlayStation Studios that you think they're so sacred that they can do no wrong, right? I think we all get these biases, right? We think that a game company or a studio can do no wrong, but clearly there was something amiss, I would think, for PlayStation to say, let's pump the brakes on this Last of Us Factions 2. I mean, Druckmann said it was the most ambitious thing they had ever worked on, which I think when he's saying that, he's saying, this has been really hard for us. This has been stretching us. This is ambitious. This is big. This isn't just a single-player story anymore. And that, I think, is where live service is going to struggle, because so many of these studios are stepping into an arena they have no clue what they're doing.
Do you think Factions, and again, I don't know if they've ever mentioned anything about this, but do you think Factions is sort of like the day before? Where you're in a lot, like it's like a division. It's the day before, where you're in that realm of The Last of Us, and your character's in that world, and you're scavenging the worlds to find stuff to live inside that universe. Is that what Factions is supposed to be, or is it supposed to be just a PvP match type of thing?
Well, the original Factions had multiple modes and only like up to 8 people. The rumors were this was going to bump it up to 40, and some of the concept art had sort of a bigger map, bigger area feel, like maybe a bit of a battle royale. I would imagine they would weave in the survival elements of things you needing to scavenge, and the way it played out was every match was a day, and you had to survive so many weeks and things like that, and you were, it was 2 sides sort of going back and forth. I would imagine that a lot of that would have evolved into something like you're describing. We haven't seen it yet, right. But I would imagine it would have to have some sense of, maybe permanence isn't the right word, but it can't just be a mode that I play and then I'm not going to come back and do that for months at a time. Like, I think that was my concern about The Division Heartland. It's like, it's just survival. Like, why am I going to come back and do this every week and month? Like, it's fun. It really is fun. But it complements a character and something that has more permanence. Like, I have like a guy, I've gone through a story, I've got my gear, right. and survival was additive to that. It wasn't its own thing. And I think that's where some of these game companies can get really wrong-headed. They're like, well, we got really great feedback on this mode, let's just turn it into live service. And it's like, that's not what it takes to be a live service game. That's not what made Fortnite what it is today. Fortnite didn't explode because they had like a mode and people were like, this is great, give us more. They took a shot at a game mode that was rising in popularity from H1 to PUBG, and they hit at the right time. I think they just...
and they're changing the map all the time and intertwining that story within the map itself, and then taking big IPs, paying big money to get those into the game, and then making a story around it, like Marvel or DC or Star Wars. You know what I mean? It's not just because it's a BR, and that's why it's successful.
Even that, I feel like a lot of that came late. Like the explosion of Fortnite that first year, they weren't doing a lot of that. It mainly felt like they tried to answer some of the main frustrations of your more casual, more mid-lane players that would try to play PUBG, and it's like, I can't see anybody. I run 100 yards and I get sniped. Like, I don't understand. They put in things like cone of accuracy, so once somebody starts shooting at you, you don't get laser beamed. You have time to kind of react and get into cover. And then the building, just being able to turn around and put up a wall. I think people really loved the idea of, I'm kind of empowered to just run around and play. And when they did that, it kind of opened the floodgates. The art style of the game was really appealing. It was like, that looks like a pretty approachable game. I remember people saying, this is a joke. This looks like a game for kids.
Because of the graphics, right.
And they sort of turned their nose up to it. I played it for 20 minutes. I was like, this game's going to absolutely crush PUBG. No doubt.
Yeah, how's that working out for Minecraft, where Minecraft is 8-bit and it's the world's most popular game because of the...
Right, right.
Who's going to play the game like that?
And there are things that you can't really grasp and talk about with Fortnite without going back and seeing. So much of that was just organic. Nobody knew Dr. Disrespect was going to take a break and Ninja was going to have this sudden influx of viewership and attention on him because he had been playing with Doc, and now there's this game Fortnite that's almost built for Ninja, like his demeanor, his look, his vibe. It's like Fortnite was built for him. Like, Doc plays it and it's funny, but Fortnite and Ninja was like peanut butter and jelly, and that's organic. You can't plan for that. His explosion, his numbers, the clips going viral, none of that is something that you can like bottle and just replicate. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of these companies have just completely missed the mark. They don't see the journey. All they see is Fortnite does battle pass and skins and seasons. Yeah. We'll do that too. And it's like, no, that's not it. That's working because there's a player base. That's not why you have a player base.
And that's the number one thing about live service games. You have to have a player base. If there's no player base, you don't have anything.
Right. And same thing with Destiny. Destiny has seasons and battle passes and cosmetics. Much of that they pulled directly from Fortnite. I remember saying, this is what Destiny needs to do. And I linked it back to the Sparrow Racing League book in the first Destiny. And I was like, they did this first. They did this battle pass thing first before Fortnite did. They need to bring that back. And sure enough, that's what they did. They were like, well, let's just do the premium tier and the free tier and have that every couple of months. But that's not what got people into Destiny. That's what they used later on to give people that reason to come back and spend money. But they already had a player pool to sort of throw that at. And this is why I've continued to think one of the solutions for live service or games as a service or ongoing games is early access, especially if you're a recognizable IP. You've got to give the game a chance to not just maybe experience some virality if you get the right people playing it. Apex certainly leveraged that. But it also gives you a chance to make those updates, those changes, and those tweaks according to what the consumer is going to say. Because you don't know what the community thinks until you have a community. It's like you might think, oh, this is what people are going to want. I mean, look at Destiny when it launched. Look at Destiny now. It's like it's almost indistinguishable. It doesn't even look at the same game anymore. Some of that's from player feedback. Some of that's trends within the market that they're just trying to chase. But maybe talk about that just a little bit. How do you envision a game company capturing a player base? Because I don't think you do it with the window dressing of a battle pass and cosmetics. That's sort of almost an after-the-fact reality. How do you fill a funnel with people and keep them around long enough to get feedback and then also maybe some money?
Well, you got to make this is the difference between, and again, free-to-play games and games that you make, like you have to buy $70. A free-to-play game has to feel good right off the bat, right? Because it's free, right? So people look at it and go, "Oh, damn, this feels really good to play," right? So that hooks you in right away. Then the map, like you're on, like look at what Call of Duty Warzone's doing, right? Warzone when it first came out was just a big map of Call of Duty, and they put stuff in, but then Call of Duty kind of fortified it, right? Fortnite-ified it, right? Where they started adding like the Godzilla event and the big monsters fighting, and then putting Spawn and Skeletor in there, and putting celebrities in there, just like Fortnite's doing. So they took a page out of their book to make it. But most of these live service games have to feel good to play. If you can't that's the first step. If they don't feel good to play, then people are just going to move on to the next thing that's free to play that actually does feel good. So when you look at for instance, what's that game that just came out, beta test, The First Descendants, right? The First Descendant, right? That's what it's called. Yeah. So when it came out last year, it was a horrible game in alpha, but then they came back with the beta, and everyone's like, man, this feels a lot better. This feels good. I can't wait for this game to come out, right? Yep. They won them over based on that. And once they launch a game, if it's not an alpha or beta, I mean, even Fortnite was in alpha for like, what, 2 years, two and a half years after it came out, maybe even 3. They make changes. Once they have you as, well, it feels good to play, then they start making adjustments of the people. Well, you should change this. You should do that. Then they listen to the community, and the community feels like they're a part of the game, and the company makes them feel like they're part of the game, and they start adjusting things, and everyone's like, oh, man, this feels so much better. And that's how you make these live service games feel good. But it has to feel good from the start. If it doesn't feel good to play, then people are like, peace. They're out.
Yeah. I think the content loop and the way the game feels, if that's not pristine from jump, you're going to lose people. They're not even going to give you a shot. I think what comes after is, can you filter and sort of disseminate player feedback and then throw it into the blender of expertise? Like, where is this expertise coming from? And that this is where I think Bungie's going to come in. for some of these studios under PlayStation to say, oh, okay, this is the player feedback you're getting. These are the player behavioral trends you're seeing. We've been there, okay? This is good, this is bad, this means you've made mistakes or whatever. I think that's the key, and that's why I think so much of this is going to lead to, I know that there's already a pretty significant rise of early access on Steam, but I think we're going to see an increase in early access with live service games specifically, because if not, you're going to continue to do this thing where you work and you work and you work and you shove the game out and people are like, this game sucks. Like, well, I don't even like it. You know, people are like, well, Concord's coming next year. Somebody said, oh, Concord's going to be a success. Why? We don't know anything. PlayStation showed us a cinematic with cool music. It doesn't mean anything. I've seen incredible trailers from games that don't exist anymore. Like that doesn't mean anything. So I do want to thank some people supporting the channel. Joker Quinn and Babbling Bike did some gifted memberships, and Muku renewed their membership. Thank you so much, guys. Take a second and smash the like button and type in chat. We're trying to include some of what you're saying in the chat. Continuing the conversation, though, this is not the only company pushing for live service. PlayStation's not some crazy old man on the hill that's trying to do something weird. Right. Everybody seems to be wanting to do this. Games Radar reporting here, Gotham Knights and Hogwarts Legacy publisher reveals its focus on live service games. So they also talked about Sony reconsidering its plans. I don't know why they're using the word reconsider. They're adjusting. They're not like, well, we don't know if we're going to do this or not. It's like, no. Everybody keeps running with that. It's like, listen, I get it. Nobody likes live service. I think people are passively cheering for all this to sort of blow up in these companies' faces because they don't want it to work. But as reported by Eurogamer, Warner Brothers CEO David Zaslav says, our focus is on transforming our biggest franchises from largely console and PC based with 3 or 4 year release schedules to include more always-on gameplay through live services, multi-platform, and free-to-play extensions. Now, you notice he starts out with, they want to transform their biggest franchises. Yeah. We know what their biggest franchise is at this moment in time. It's got to be Hogwarts. There's no way that anything they own is bigger than that. That is on pace to be the biggest commercial success of the year. Now, I've had people tell me, Zelda's going to come from behind. Zelda's in second place.
I think Zelda's in first place right now. I think they're at 19 million.
The report, I was going to say, the report I saw yesterday, Hogwarts was still holding first place.
Still hold place? Okay.
Yeah. Now, I was told, Christmas is going to be really big for Zelda. And I'm like, yeah, but in 15 days, Hogwarts gets another release date.
Yeah, the Switch, and it looks actually pretty good on the thing we saw.
I can't believe, I don't know how they did it, because I was worried about that game. I told people, I said, listen.
It's that magic sauce.
I'm telling you, I was like, don't go buy Hogwarts on your PlayStation 4 or your Xbox One X or anything. Like, wait for reviews, because I don't know. That game, it had minor performance issues when it came out. Nothing major. Little things here and there. But I was like, I don't know, man. You guys, and then they got that thing running great on old gen. Great reviews. And I'm like, the Switch? I was like, are you serious? I was like, that thing's running on like a calculator's processor. Like, I love my Switch, but it's super weak. We know this. Like, come on. Where's the Switch 2? But this thing's looking pretty promising. And we know Harry Potter and Christmas, like, that's always like a cozy time to be at the castle with fires and, snow on the ground. So with Warner Brothers doing this, what's crazy to me is, I know I talked about this with you. We did a show on this. Like, why is Hogwarts Legacy
not a live service?
Not live service. You built the school. It's a social game. You're in a social atmosphere, and I wanted so badly to play that game co-op with my wife. Like, I had to stop playing it because other games were coming out that I had to play and cover, but I would sit next to her on the couch while she finished it. She put in like 60-something hours. She was trying to get all of the pages, but one of the moths was glitched. Like, we went to a guide and everything, and like the moth just wasn't there. We don't know what it was. I don't know if they've ever fixed it, but
I know which one you're talking about.
She got irritated. She was like, she was doing all of them. She's like, where is it? So I was trying to help her. I was like, I don't know, babe. I was like, it says it's supposed to be right there on the wall, and it wasn't there. But the whole time I'm thinking, gosh, we could have had so much fun with this game, like, together. Yep. I think that's next step. I mean, we even had, I know my producer kept saying, there's going to be a Hogwarts Online. They already built the world in the school. They're just going to take it and put it online.
Modders on PC did put, like, a week after it came out, they put out a multiplayer where there's like 40 people or something like that inside the school, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. You couldn't do anything besides have like a social, like, tower type of thing, like in Destiny.
Right.
But I thought it was pretty cool that they still did it.
Well, and then there's a game from a completely different developer, the Quidditch game. I mean, it looked kind of like Fortnite, but it looked, Quidditch.
I played it. It was fun. I can't say more because I signed an NDA, but it was fun.
Okay.
Right? But the Hogwarts, do you think they make Hogwarts 2 and then make it social? Or do you think they add the social to the Hogwarts that's already out?
Man, that's a tough one, because I could see them doing another Hogwarts and it's like your next year, new story, new experiences. They even mentioned some of the other schools, right? Yeah. There was the other school where she talked about how they didn't even use wands. I was like, that'd be really cool to figure out how to do magic, without a wand. And I forget the character's name, but you're having like a conversation with her fairly early in the game about that. So I think they planted seeds about like other places you could go and stuff. So I could see them wanting to do a sequel. It'd be silly not to, because the commercial success, if you launch a trailer for Hogwarts Legacy 2, I mean, that thing would pull. I mean, it did so well, and it's on so many platforms. So that would seem like an automatic, that's already been greenlit. I would imagine they've already started working on that. I'm guessing based on industry trends that's what they would do. They wouldn't be like, yeah, let's just see what happens. Like, no, the sales are nuts. One of the reasons I think they staggered the release of old gen and Nintendo was they thought, if we mess this up, it's really going to hurt us. Like, we've got to get this right. This is so commercially successful. We can't walk back. Like, Gotham Knights is a disaster in my book. Like, they all of a sudden were like, oh, we're not on old gen. And it's like, okay. And then performance in the game is not good. It feels like an older game. It actually looks, I think, inferior to Arkham Knight, which is an older game. So I would just assume, based on trends, we get a Hogwarts Legacy 2. But I would also assume, based on what this guy's saying, there's a live service Harry Potter or Hogwarts game coming.
Yeah, I actually think, and I said this when the game before it came out, we had a conversation, and I said it after I played it, I said, I think they're hush-hush, because there was one time of people talking about DLC, and they came out and said, we're not talking about any DLC until all the copies are out, like all the platforms are out. And that's when Switch was supposed to come out in July. Now it's coming out in November. We're just a couple days away, like you said. And once that launches, okay, it launches on the 15th, 16th?
I believe it's the 25th of November.
Okay. At the Game Awards, I think we get some sort of trailer of some DLC or something, some sort of tease, some sort of something from Warner Brothers, from Hogwarts Legacy, that something big is going to come on down the road, right? Because, and I don't think it's going to happen early in the year. I think it happens sometime next year. But I think that they do something with Hogwarts Legacy. If it's DLC, like you pay for it, or if it's some sort of live service, something is happening. I don't see them taking another 5 to 8 years dumping into a Hogwarts 2 to then make it. I said, I think Hogwarts does what like Grand Theft Auto 5 did, where they have an online aspect like Grand Theft Auto 5. Like, Grand Theft Auto 5 is a standalone game, but then there's an online aspect of Grand Theft Auto. I think they do the exact same thing. I said this over a year ago when for Hogwarts. I say they do Hogwarts, and then they make a Hogwarts online that's part of the game itself.
Yeah, you were correct, by the way. It is November the 14th. I think I might be remembering the 16th, but it might have been the old gen was like on. It had a 5 in it. They had so many release dates that it looks like it was May the 5th for PlayStation 5 and Xbox One. So maybe that's where I got like a 5 in my memory. I was like, I thought there was one with a 5 in it. So yeah, the 14th. That's very, very close. That's in 4 days, and that is. Funny enough, that's the day after the Game Awards nominations. So, I mean, that's landing, we're in Game Awards season once that game's out.
I think we also, for Gotham Knights, I said this with Gotham Knights, I think you actually looked at my video for good and bad. I said the good or bad for that game would be how many bad guys they have in the game at launch, and they only had 3, which was pathetic, right? And then they added Starro in the heroic, I forget what the second modes were called, Heroic Assault, I think they were called. I think they add more case files and stuff like that to Gotham Knights, especially after listening to WB saying we're doubling down on, because they can just add more stories to Gotham Knights, where you're still going around the city fighting new bosses, new henchmen, I would think that'd be pretty simple compared to making a brand new game. They could do something like that with Gotham Knights. So maybe they go back, WB looks at it and goes, all right, Hogwarts Legacy, we can turn that into a live service. We can make Gotham Knights, we can keep dumping content into that for new bad guys, for heroic assaults or whatnot, and keep that going. Then they have Suicide Squad, which we know nothing about, and it comes out in less than 3 months, right? That's another one that's
I was going there next.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, I was going there next. The article, I want to get your opinion on this. Chat, you got to weigh in on this as well, because the article goes on to say that this is surprising that they're pushing into live service. And they say, considering Kill the Justice League was reportedly delayed following live service backlash from fans. And for me, I remember the feedback to Kill the Justice League being a bit mixed. Most of it seemed like it just centered on the gameplay didn't look good, and people wondered why everybody had guns. They're like, it looks like Fortnite. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
You have a bunch of characters with a bunch of different abilities, and everybody has a gun, and we're just sort of flying around the city. Now, I remember there being people upset about the live service elements, but I didn't feel like that was the primary reason that they delayed it. I felt like the gameplay just got negative feedback, and then they were like, we got to rework this, rethink this. People aren't too thrilled. There was initial irritation when there was like screenshots that leaked and people saw currency and they're like, here we go, a live service game. But what was your impression? Maybe I'm wrong here. What was your impression? Did they delay Kill the Justice League because people were mad it's live service?
I think they delayed it not because it was live service. I think they delayed it because it was always online, right?
Okay.
It was supposed to be an always online thing, and there was a thing that came out about a month ago, rumor, not official, that they went back and they changed it where people can now play solo and online. You don't need to play it online. Someone said that when it comes out, that's the things they changed. And I also think they changed where not everyone now is gun pro gun. Right, like they if you're using Deadshot's going to be getting guns, but if you're King Shark or like Harley Quinn, you're going to be more melee based, right? Or maybe Harley's both because she uses guns and melee, right? So maybe they went back and kind of made these changes. I don't know, but then I have more questions because I played Marvel's Avengers a really long time, okay, and if you go back and change Suicide Squads to sort of that method. If all guns were guns in the game before they launched and now they delayed it and now they changed it, we're now melee weapons and guns. And when you pick up stuff, is King Shark going to have the gloves that don't change visually on him? And it's like cosmetic, you know what I mean? And now you have like a +5 gauntlet that makes you more powerful. Like, is that what's happening now? I don't know. But we're 3 months away, and I'm sure we're going to find out real soon with the Game Awards show coming up with some sort of trailer or something.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it literally could just be that they were like, let's just put our heads down. This has gotten so negative, and then they'll just launch later. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to make significant changes. There's not enough time. I mean, goodness gracious, that delaying a game just 1 year is not enough time. They didn't even delay it that long, right? But let's just say you delay a game for a whole year. Even that 1 year is not enough time to completely change your game. I just don't think that they're going to make tons of significant changes here. I think potentially we'll see reworks of the characters so that it's not everybody running around with a gun. Because I said, look, it looks fun, and I kind of defended it. I said, this is kind of what I expected, just kind of a throwaway fun game to play with my buddies. I didn't expect a super serious game because it was originally described in a way where I thought this isn't going to be like the Batman games. So some of it had to do with I just kind of lowered my expectations. Throw away Friday night game with the boys, right? Crack some beers and just shoot some enemies or whatever. Now, I'll admit though that when I was watching the gameplay, I said, this looks like a limited time mode from Fortnite. Like it just looked like, hey, run around as characters from the S Squad and just shoot these purple things. Like it didn't.
The purple things, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I think it's a both and. I think people were irritated about. Somebody in chat said that one of the first things people complained about was there was 11 currencies, and it's like, okay, are those 11 currencies, are they materials that you use on your, person to upgrade stuff? Like, there's a lot of currencies and things in Spider-Man 2, but if you saw a picture of all those currencies in Spider-Man 2, you can, like, freak out, be like, oh my gosh. So I get that, though. I think that makes everybody think, yep, it's going to be some scummy live service game. They're going to try and be getting me to buy cosmetics and everything else. And I think that's a valid concern. I'm not, like, trying to defend this game. I thought it looked silly and fun. I wasn't taking it that serious. But there's also that thing that we've talked about up to now. How does a game like this last? Like, how do you get people to come back if it is so generic? If it is so, you just run around with guns shooting people. There doesn't seem to be a lot of identity to the characters.
To me, comic book games are the perfect live service game. Perfect live service game. Because if you just want to sell your cosmetics, cool. But you got to put content in the game, right? So if the game comes out, what interests me about Suicide Squad, one, I love Rocksteady. Up until this point, Rocksteady has never disappointed me in their storytelling, and I really like their storytelling. So that's why I'm going to play Suicide Squads when it comes out, because I want to see the story, and I think it's pretty cool that you go up against the Justice League, right? You get to kill or capture or whatever it is, the Justice League. That to me is fun, right? Now, we know about, I think it's Batman, Aquaman, Superman, Green Lantern, and the Flash. I think that's the 5, and then I said one word. So I think there's like 5 or 6 people in the game. Okay. Live service aspect of that game, once you complete the main story, once you complete everything, it needs to be like a DC Universe Online type of thing where they sell you free content, which is like the next issue of a comic book. So the next big baddie comes in. This is where Marvel's Avengers failed on this, okay? Where you bring in the next big baddie. Let's say it's Darkseid, and Darkseid comes in, and now there's missions leading up to Darkseid, and then you fight Darkseid, and now you wait for the next DLC to come in that's free. And the way they make their money is really bad-ass cosmetics. Like, we're talking smoking hot Harley Quinn. We're talking badass-looking Batman or whatever, or something where or King Shark looks cool. Not these cheesy little cosmetics. Like, you have to sell really good cosmetics, and that's how you keep bringing the content, more bad guys, more heroes to use. If Suicide Squad turns out to be like First Descendant, where I'm leveling up characters, and then the next character gets thrown in and I unlock it, I can either my time or pay money, that would be something that I can see what they do with Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I'm always nervous when you step away from vanity items. It's like, if I want to pay money to make my character look cool, I can completely ignore that. I know people argue that is game impacting. I don't disagree, but I think the game impact is very low. I think what you start selling can rise in game impact, and I'm always nervous when they're like, you can grind this or pay to skip the grind. I'm always nervous because that quickly...
Genshin Impact does it perfectly, right?
It quickly leads to manufactured bottlenecks where you can't progress or you can't get the thing done, and they're pitting your own investment against you. And I'm always like, if I want to make myself look cool, I can ignore that, right? I can keep playing the game and advancing in the game, even though I'm kind of bummed that I don't have the cool outfit. But if you actually directly affect gameplay...
Yeah, no power.
Yeah, to try to get me to spend money, right. I will say this, that I don't have a lot of high hopes for Kill the Justice League, because... No. The guy on the earnings call went on to say, ultimately, we want to drive engagement and monetization of longer cycles and at higher levels. We are currently under scale and see significant opportunity to generate greater post-purchase revenue. So that obviously, when we hear that, that's very corporate. That's very, I think gamers this year are getting extremely disillusioned. Like, this is not some happy family. This is big business. This is big money. That's why people are getting laid off. That's why live service is being targeted. These companies want to make tons of money. Like, we had like a good portion of the gaming community this year cheering for a $69 billion acquisition, and then everybody wants to like surprise Pikachu face when thousands of people are getting laid off and companies are greedy. It's like, you cheered for big business move all year long. Like, that's a big business move. Like, this is big business. They're not done, by the way. There'll be big spending next year. There's tons of acquisitions coming, right? So the layoffs this year, the push for live service and acquisitions, mergers and acquisitions, this is big, big money. This industry is booming. And it's not some happy, quaint family, right? We're not singing Kumbaya. They're trying to get money off of us, right?
Yeah, they don't care about you.
This is why I've always championed, rather than say all live service games are trash, all monetization's trash, it's all predatory. You need to pinpoint the bad practices, call them out, and don't support them. That's how you get changes like they got in Gran Turismo 7. I don't think we achieve anything as gamers by just, we do this hand wave of like, well, this is all greedy, this is all gross, all this monetization's bad. It's like, there are plenty of games that do monetization and ongoing formats that are not bad and should, and you're more, I think, well within your right to support, and there are others that I think fail because they either cross the line or they become predatory. In that vein, what's your biggest concern about live service and monetization? Because that is always like the primary concern is they're just going to give us a crap game and try to sell us skins. Like, they're not going to have it's not going to be a good game. That's where everybody goes with live service, is it'll launch broken and they're just going to have a bunch of monetization. It's going to be greedy, scummy, and bad. Like, that's always where people go. Are there specific trends and things that you are concerned about if live service continues to grow in prominence, which I believe that it will?
I mean, I kind of like, I played a lot of the First Ascendant when it came out on beta, and I liked what they did, where you could, when the game comes out, you're going to be paying like microtransactions to get certain characters if you want to get that character, or you can put in your time. I think there's a good balance between live service, and if the industry wants to charge $20 for a skin, cool. And if you're a person that wants to pay for that skin, cool. As long as there's no power involved in that, and you just play the game just like me, like I play the game, you play the game, you have less hours than me, but you can still, they still respect your time where you can earn currency to then get something, cool, right? I think that's the balance. If it's just cosmetic, fine. Like Transformers Reactivate's coming out. If I can play as Optimus Prime from the start, because that's one of the guys I'm picking out of the 3 that they give an option of. But then there's Soundwave, who's one of my favorites that I want to get. If I could just play the game and give them my time and then earn it, or if I want to give them money to get a skin, I just think, I wish and I hope that live service games, both if it's grindy and you play 10 hours to get that one skin, or you pay $20 to skip that 10 hours and get that skin, but both can get the skin. One does it monetary, one does it time spent in the actual game to keep the population up, to keep, you know what I'm saying? It's like a symbiotic relationship, because without the player base, people would come into a game and go, this is kind of boring, there's no one here, and they would leave, right? Yeah. And then the same people that have their skins that they buy $20 for, most of the time it's a first-person shooter game, and you can't see your own skin, so you're buying it for other people to look how badass your skin is, right? Not for yourself unless you're in a menu system. So I feel like there's a balance of, if live service games can balance that, respect your time to grind and earn things, and also respect your time where you're not paying $40 for a skin, you're paying $5 or $10 for a skin. You know what I mean? Like a lower, where people would spend more and go, oh, you know what? It's only $10. I'll pick that up. Yeah.
I think my biggest concern is if we continue to see rise of games like Genshin in our region specifically, because that's when you'll start to see more and more games do it. One game pulls it off, and then everybody else starts doing it. And the gacha mechanics, or even the mechanics of paying to skip grind, those are the ones that I'm always a little bit more nervous about. You want to dump cosmetics in your game. Recently, Halo Infinite was drawing criticism because they were selling the classic Mark V for like $22. And I said, I'm not going to criticize this. I think the optics on it's kind of bad, because like you finally get the game back to a great spot, and like everybody's like saying, hey, we're having a bit of a comeback right now, and then you're like, here's a classic skin, and it's $22. Oh, and you can't mix and match, right? The thing I only gave them criticism of was they went multi-core on the colors. Like, that was a complaint in the beginning. If you bought blue, you could only use it on one of the armor sets. and or you couldn't use it on all of them. And they updated that to where they can, but then they raised the price on the colors. They're like, well, because we gave you your multi, and I was like, come on. I was like, that's a quality of life improvement. You don't need to be charging people for that.
What they need to do for that skin is how many people would have bought the season pass? Especially, I like Halo's model where you buy the season pass and it never expires, type of thing. How many people would have bought that if that skin is at the end of that card, right? And then they would have paid the $10, and then more people would have bought the season pass, and then they would have worked through it with their own time to earn the thing that they paid for, right? Instead, they're like, we're gonna get $22. Now, yeah, sure. If people buy it for $22, that's two people that would have bought it for $10 season pass, type of thing. Where do you want the short gain of the $20 of people paying $20, or do you want the longevity of people going, oh, you know what? That's a solid price. $10 for the season pass, and I get that piece of cosmetic at the end. More people would have paid, in my opinion, more people would have paid for the season pass and played it.
Yeah. I've always said this about Fortnite, so I said the same thing about Halo. I said that the price can't be too high because it's always a question of if the market bears it. Like, if that thing sells at the rate that they wanted it to sell, then you're like, that's too expensive. And they're like, yeah, well, that's the price, and tons of people bought it. I think they know their audience. I think they know the lion's share of the people that are coming back around are very likely to buy it. So, but I do think whenever we get into discussions about monetization, there's so many different practices that you have to be in tune with, whether they're selling card packs for a sports game, or these guys that are trying to get good pulls of items in CSGO, and then you've got, the pay to skip grind. That, I think, is where everybody's concerns are 100% valid, that we're heading toward a lot of the more bad practices becoming more standard, and that's when I think you start to implode the live service sort of culture, where people aren't going to want to play them anymore. They're going to always assume that there's a knife behind the back. There's some kind of an angle. There's some kind of the other
boot's going to drop. Yeah.
Right. And there was another, big thing that happened this week that I do think will have an impact on the live service environment, which is Rockstar essentially saying that, GTA 6 is coming. And we knew it was coming from their earnings reports. It was like, what could they possibly be launching
that they would know? We know it's coming.
Right. Right. They did their little tweet, and somebody was a little critical of the fact that this was another time where something that could have been a pretty cool surprise wasn't a surprise because we knew about it 9 hours earlier. I said that with Metal Gear. When the Metal Gear trailer dropped over the summer, I was like, that would have been awesome, but we all knew it was coming, so it wasn't that awesome. It was like, oh yeah, there's Metal Gear. The one guy said, you're not a surprise anymore, you're an expectation. I thought that was well stated.
Yep.
Before we talk about GTA 6 and the obvious insane live service potential there, as well as anything that they might be planning with GTA Online in conjunction with GTA 6. I don't know what their plans are there. Just speak maybe a little bit about that. Are we entering into an era where the scoop is ruining the surprise? Like we're not really surprised by anything anymore. And I don't want to fault people who do something that's in demand. Like, you have sources people want to know. They want to know the inside info. Whether it's Tom Henderson or Jason Schreier, they got sources, so they get to break stories before even the companies themselves get to say anything.
Here's the catch-22, right? So I talked about this. I have a whole video that I did this on a standalone, but it's already delayed, or it's done because I was too late, because when Jason Schreier talked about it, I filmed it, and then the next morning they announced it. So that video is obsolete now, right?
Yeah.
Because it was like speculation of like, when's the game coming? Is it coming, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday? Well, it's done, right? Because it came out the next day. I was upset at Jason Schreier. I'm not mad at him. Look, I love Jason Schreier because he is the one last guy that's actually a real journalist that has integrity, right? And when he says something, you believe it because he's trustworthy. He's got integrity, right? He has that quality of him, and you're like, oh man, Jason said something. That's true. Where if if Troll1256 on Twitter says Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to drop tomorrow, you're like, yeah, whatever. Sure, because they're wrong 99.9% of the time for the last 7 years. Okay, so when Jason Schreier comes out and says this is what's happening this week, they're going to drop it. I was like, come on, Jason, you're better than this. I was like, you didn't need the hits or the clicks for this, right? Like, he was on the news. He was on not Forbes. He was on Bloomberg like television talking about Grand Theft Auto 6 trailer that they're going to drop next month or whatever. And I was just like, did Jason just turn himself into a YouTuber? Like a person that's just grabbing stuff and doing it? Because again, he's a credible source, and I was kind of disappointed in him for doing what he did. If someone else did it, I would have been fine with it. But because Jason did it, I was a little disappointed.
Well, I would only say that he has a history of having reliable sources. That's the highest. That's the highest compliment I'm willing to pay him. He has a history of reliable sources.
What gives him credibility to what he does.
Right. The other words you used, I don't know if I would use that word. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I would use that one. But I will say he has a history of, I'm keeping hits above the belt here. I think he has a history of having reliable sources. That's as much as I'm willing to say. And I will say that it's really, really hard to not do what he did, because he got in. I mean, like you're saying, he's on the news. He got 12 million views on his first tweet.
And Rockstar got 161 million views on their tweet.
Right. So for somebody his size and his pull, right? He writes for Bloomberg. He has 400,000 followers on Twitter. I mean, that's insane. That kind of pull's insane. I mean, some of his most viewed tweets, like the Call of Duty one he just did, which is, I think we're going to end up doing a story on that one, got a million views. This Grand Theft Auto thing cooked for him for a long time. So I struggle to fault anybody who's like, hey, man, I built a career on having sources in the industry, and that's what pays my bills, right? That if I'm coming through him and thinking from his mindset, it's like, I've built my career doing this. What do you want me to do? Not run the story? But I do think it's a reality. It's sort of this emergent reality from the gaming world and the gaming press that, as you said, it's almost as if the gaming press has now morphed into this. They're content creators. They're
like Reddit. They're like Reddit posters.
Yeah, and I saw a pretty good video from, it was Asmongold reacting to Ludwig, and Ludwig's talking about the situation with Mr. Beast, who, Jimmy could cure a disease and he'd get criticized.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And so he puts these wells in this area of the world.
I watched it.
And it just turns into the typical nonsense. And Ludwig's going through the pillars of journalism. And as he's reading them, I'm thinking, none of the games media cuts this mustard at all. None of them.
Yeah.
They don't come close. They're either, mouthpieces for the brand they cheer for, or their bias is as clear as a logo on their shirt, right? And that's not false about me, right? I've got my own biases. I have my own leans, but I'm not posturing as a journalist. I'm not writing,
a journalist.
Right? I'm not writing for a reputable outlet that then I earn money off of ad revenue and ad clicks, right? That's not what I'm doing. It's clear that that's not what I'm doing. And so as I'm listening to Ludwig go down through it, I'm thinking personally about it. I'm like, my gosh, nobody did this when it mattered most to me. Nobody adhered to these pillars. And now I think even more. I think the whole thing is somewhat caving in on itself. And one of the collateral pieces of damage to this is that nothing's surprising anymore. We know. I said, because people were sort of making fun of the fact that like Rockstar said, hey, we're going to tell you something in December. It's like, what? Like, it's an announcement about an announcement, which is humorous in and of itself. But it's like, they kind of have to do that.
Right.
Because if not, His
the
headline
announcement before the announcement was spoiled by his announcement of the
That's right. That's right. If they wouldn't have been planning on doing that, his headline would have been different. It would have just been Rockstar plans to debut next GTA in December, completely deflating the okay, that's like a scheduled video now. Cool, man. Yep. Thank you. And so I don't think he has the power. I don't think anybody has the power to take away from the momentum of GTA 6.
No, it's a beast on its own.
Yeah, but I do think that there is something organic happening to our experiences as gamers. We're going through a bit of an evolution. The death of E3 has changed things. Marketing cycles are shrinking. I don't think we're going to show you a trailer for a video game that you're not going to play for 9 years. Like, that's kind of going away, unless you're Elder Scrolls 6. That's kind of going away.
Or Mass Effect, the next Mass Effect that might come out in 2029.
Yeah,
I'm so glad they showed footsteps of a person walking. I'm super excited about that one.
Can't people are like, are you going to talk about that? I was like, talk about what? Like, what am I going to say? Like, what am I going to say? But I do think that's part of the evolution. Part of the evolution is that it's the death of the surprise. No shock, no surprise, no wow. I think when someone pulls off a surprise, it'll be a surprise that they pulled off a surprise. I'm like, I can't believe they pulled this off. How'd they keep this quiet, right? Like, I think that will be the real achievement of these games companies going forward.
But that's not true, because there's people that have sources that leak stuff for real, and they're real. Right? People see things, but because the person is not credible, because it's just some random Twitter account or some Reddit post that says something, they're like, this is all false information. Until 7 months later, when stuff comes out and they're like, did you see that post back in Reddit like 7 months ago where that guy got it correct? Right? But when Jason Schreier says something, everyone's like, it's true. It's true. Yeah, and that's the difference between someone just leaking something on the internet and someone that has the reputation of, yes, L saying that he's just doing his job. Journalism is doing a journalist. But did he do journalism? Did his articles say anything different than what they said? Hey, we're coming out with a trailer next month in December. Jason Schreier, hey, Rockstar is doing a trailer next month of Grand Theft Auto, right? He beat them to the punch of something that they were going to announce. It just seems weird from him, right?
I think it's like a blurred line of, we want to have the press in a position to say, I've got anonymous sources and there's some bad stuff that happened, right? Or at least, hey, here's the full story on what happened to Anthem. Here's the full story on Bungie's layoffs, right? That was, I think, one of my favorite insider stories was that one this year, because I was like, I told you guys that Bungie was toxic and terrible, and now you can see it pretty clearly, right? And it goes all the way to the top. This dude's willing to walk out and tweet and posture like this wasn't their decision, and then you find out the truth, that they're in there just basically lying to people, and like the whole way that was handled. Like, I love that. Yes, we want to have the ability for people to anonymously go to the press, because there's plenty of things and there's plenty of truth and revelations that I personally would love to come to the light, but we always want to have that. And I think this starts to blur the line where you're just leaking the marketing strategy of some company.
Right.
You're like, yeah, they're going to do a trailer. They're going to announce this thing. And you're like, what? Okay. Is that of public interest? Is like, do we need to know that? Or did you just kind of blow up their marketing plans? Like, you just disrupted how marketing even works.
Right. It's someone going into a surprise party and everyone's hiding inside the house and Jason Schreier's in the bushes outside the front door. Right? That's what it is. That's exactly what it is.
Bunch of people in there, dude. Have a good time. And then he walks away.
He says, surprise! And he's like, oh, there's a bunch of people in your house. All right, have a good night. And then he walks away. And then they open the door and they're like, surprise! And the guy's like, yeah, I already know.
Yeah.
The guy out front told me. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the guy said, you're no longer a surprise, you're an expectation. I remember at the end of the Metal Gear trailer, I thought to myself, the leakers ruined that. Like that wasn't like no one's eyebrows went up like, oh my gosh. Like obviously the people that don't do what we do probably thought that. Like they're watching at home. They're like, no way, Metal Gear is coming back. But it was like the rest of us were like, oh yeah, it's the Metal Gear trailer. Cool. Like we just checked the box and then we went on with our day.
In back in the day, at least 20 years ago, when someone walked out of the theater after watching episode 1 of Star Wars, and everyone's in those, remember those long lines you had to wait outside the movie theater?
Yeah,
right, for your hours ahead of time, you're waiting that line. Guy just watched the movie, comes out, yells out something, right? He got his ass beat. Because you just ruined it for everybody else, right? Because for what? What's the clout? What is the clout that you just did? Right?
There is no clout. Right? That's just an evil person.
Right. He just wants because he's like, that's pretty funny. I just ruined it for everyone else that was waiting. That I saw, right. That's what just happened. That's what just happened.
Yeah. I mean, that's a guy with an internal toxic narrative, and he has to do that because he's a terrible awful person. Like my favorite thing. So I'm not going to tell anybody what it is, but I finished Spider-Man 2 and all of those low-life losers out there that were spreading spoilers, it was a fake spoiler. They basically got tricked into distributing a spoiler that wasn't true. It was like, oh, this big thing happens at the end. And I was like, crap, I saw that. Oh, well. And I got to the end and I was like, they were all wrong. I was like, so they literally trolled the trolls. So I whoever did that, I tip my hat to you. Some heroes don't have capes. Somebody absolutely just fooled those idiots. And I think that's a victory for gamers this year, right? Like all these just absolute pieces of trash are like, well, I'm miserable, so I'm gonna try and spread my misery. It's like, goodness gracious, all over video games. Now, I wanted to have a sidebar about that because I feel like that's an ongoing conversation. I'm not going to tell you guys what spoiler wasn't true because you may get to the end of the game and feel like narrative tension. I don't want to ruin that narrative tension for you. So
why not? Just say you had a source tell you.
Because it's a great story, and I want you to enjoy it up to credits and watch post.
You should just say you have a source and then just tell us what it is, Lono.
Oh yeah, I get it. Yeah, I have a source, so I'm allowed to do this. Yeah. I wanted to have a sidebar about that because I think that's an ongoing conversation of our insiders, our leakers. Because I like Tom Henderson, I like Insider Gaming. I think it's great what he's built there. I actually like him more than a lot of the other people that have sources. I think it'd be cool if more people started going to Tommy Hendy and using him because I critiqued 2 of their headlines 2 different times. And both times, one time I got hard confirmation from him that they changed the headline because I didn't feel like it was accurate. And we DM'd and I was like, dude, I'm not trying to put you guys on blast. I was like, but come on, man. And he said, no. He said, I didn't feel it was accurate either. So I feel like he's more
Who was this one?
This is Tom Henderson. His operation is Insider Gaming.
Yeah, I didn't know. I thought you said Tom Warren for a second. So.
No. Tom Warren's with The Verge.
Okay.
And so I'd love for more people to utilize Tommy Hendy and Insider Gaming, but I do think that's an ongoing conversation, ongoing reality that we have to deal with. Now, on the subject of GTA 6, there's a lot of speculation about when this thing is going to land. Like at the latest, it's probably going to be first quarter of 2025. That's kind of where I see it landing. Okay. However, they're talking about doing many exciting upcoming catalysts, which we believe will help our company reach new record levels of financial performance. So I don't think GTA 6 is the only thing they got going. He says, our development pipeline is robust and diverse, and we are getting closer to delivering the groundbreaking titles, plural, that our audiences throughout the world have been anticipating. Now, there's speculation floating around that GTA is not the only thing they're cooking here. Where do you think they're going? They got Red Dead coming? Are they going to do anything to GTA Online? What do you think Rockstar is doing here, or is this just PR speak?
I mean, it could be PR speak. I mean, it would be nice if they ever did the agent, the agent that they've been working on for 20 years, We don't know what ever happened to that game. It's like your James Bond basically in their own like world. So it was supposed to be a cool game. Maybe they come out with Bully. Maybe there's another Bully that comes out. Maybe there's another Red Dead. Maybe they announced the Red Dead. Maybe it's just the online stuff. But I think the online's going to be mind-boggling just because of the RP. They bought the RP guys, so they're going to be doing role-playing stuff in that servers. I think been saying this for years. Grand Theft Auto World, Universe, whatever you want to talk about it. It's going to be like the metaverse, but inside Grand Theft Auto itself. So I think there's a lot of things, and I do believe it comes out this time next year. I think it comes out like October, November of next year. Obviously, if it doesn't get delayed, but I think it comes out next year because they said that their financials is going to be their biggest year ever. And if it's not going to be your biggest year ever without Grand Theft Auto in there, I don't know how that works, right? Grand Theft Auto has to be in that equation to be your biggest year ever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would make sense to do it more around this time instead of like first quarter 2025. First quarters when everything kind of slows down with respect to like spending and game sales. So it would make more sense to probably try to land in the fourth quarter of 2024. I personally think that if they're trying to play this right, you wouldn't try to put these games too close together. I mean, the last Red Dead Redemptions were like 8 years apart.
Yeah.
So I saw some people thinking like, oh, maybe we're going to get a Red Dead or whatever. If there's going to be other titles also coming in or around GTA 6, I would imagine it would be maybe the more smaller titles, not like something as big as Red Dead, something like a Bully, or they've got a couple of driving games they could do some stuff with because maybe there's a resurgence of...
Well, technically, Red Dead's a smaller game compared to Grand Theft Auto.
Well, right, I'm going down from Grand Theft thinking
I know,
like,
I'm just messing with you.
Right. Of everything that's left, Red Dead would be the biggest thing left, and then there's all their other titles that we were looking at. There's Bully, there's L.A. Noire, there's Max Payne. We got an update on that. That timeline's moving forward. I believe they're doing like some remasters. And then there is Midnight Club, Manhunt. Like they've got a lot of property that they could decide to do stuff with. And my thought is all hands on deck. GTA 6 is their number one priority first.
I agree.
Because of the expectations here. This is, to me, almost like what we haven't seen a Half-Life 3. We haven't seen a Portal 3. I think some of these guys, some of these big titles and the expectations are just so crazy that they just don't want to bring the game out. They're like, it's just, and GTA 5 and GTA Online, they make so much money that I think that's always the hard switch of like, how can we get people to switch to the new one without disrupting revenue? And because when you have a cash cow that's making that kind of money, it's like, why would we stop?
Well, the biggest thing for me for Grand Theft Auto 6, if it comes out next year, is that every single publisher / studio that's out there is just waiting to hear a release date. Because they're like, when is it coming? When is it coming out? Because we don't want to be anywhere near that thing, right? Like, we're talking nowhere 2 weeks before or 3 months after. Like, this game is going to make a black hole of people just playing this, covering this, and just nonstop. And if Grand Theft Auto 6 does the online shortly after, and not like 6 months after, but like maybe like a month after the single player game comes out, they open up the online. That's gonna just cast a shadow over everything else that comes out afterwards, right? So I think a lot of not the independent, but just the AAA studios are looking at this going, "Come on, Rockstar, any hints? Come on, Jason, you want to tell us about any release dates so we can start moving our games around, because we don't want to be anywhere near Grand Theft Auto 6 when it comes out."
I mean, do you think they're going to have a release date for us in December? Like, are they going to tell us, or are they just going to announce the game?
No, I think they're going to show you what they always do. They're going to have that girl voiceover of what's happening in the game, and then we'll see another trailer sometime in like February or March.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's a lot, I think, coming in the way of live service, and that's why I think there's going to be games of that size that are just so big that make it really tough for other live service games, because it's like once people start playing a game like that, man, it's like they're gone. They're not gonna play anything else. You're gonna lose them. I remember losing my friends to EverQuest. It's like we went from playing Call of Duty and Unreal Tournament and Quake, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we're gonna play EverQuest. And it's like, I think the same reality awaits us with games like that. Like you're gonna suck up so many players, and that, I think that is one of the ongoing debates about live services. There's only so many players. Like where are you gonna get these players? And I think that's why they're my recommendation and thought and strategy, like if I was like big level person in charge, I would say we need to be looking at genres that don't currently have live service and see if it's possible. See if there's a potential. What's the potential market size and target audience? What's the potential return? Has anybody tried it and failed? If so, what games? Because I do think anything that's involving any type of shooting is just an absolute fool's errand right now if you're trying to do live service. It's like there's so many live service shooters. You're fighting such an uphill battle there. I think you're going to have to do something that's either more creative or something that's more fresh and new, or a genre that just hasn't been touched by live service. Are there any game types that you think are untapped for live service? Because I've always said, while you're trying to think of one, we used to always say that a true like MMO looter shooter, because Destiny's like MMO light, it's like they call it an action MMO, like an actual ongoing massive universe world, whatever, an actual MMO looter shooter. I still believe that somebody's building the next great looter shooter. Like somebody's got to be building it. I don't know if it's going to be First Descendant or Project LLL, but somebody has got to be learning from what all these companies have tried and failed and putting together the Voltron of live service looter shooter or ongoing looter shooter.
I won't say a genre, but I'll say like IPs that haven't been touched that could be a live service. Like obviously Transformers Reactivate's coming out, so Transformers I would like to be a live service, right? I could see something along the lines of like maybe like G.I. Joe, also something live service-ish out there, right? And I think Marvel. I mean, Marvel Marvel and DC are the perfect things. Obviously, there's DC Universe Online, that's an MMO, but obviously these companies they're perfectly set up for a live service I mean, literally, the comic books are already written. All they got to do is take those stories off the pages and put them into the actual game for you to play, and I think that would be a hit. And people that want to buy that content or play that content, they can. You don't have to get everything, right? If you're a Batman fan, they put Batman story in there. You play a Batman campaign for 3 more hours, 5 more hours, and then they bring Wonder Woman, and you like Wonder Woman, then you play Wonder Woman, or same with Marvel. I think those brands are just oozing with live service capabilities that they could bring in.
Right. Anything you can do episodically, I think would be ripe for live service. Yeah, anything you can do episodically. And that's why I said I wonder if that's sort of the next evolution of live service. Like evolution step 1 has been kind of like, okay, people are doing battle passes and cosmetic stores and ongoing content and seasons. Like I think that's kind of like the big common theme we're noticing. And I just think like the next stage of the evolution is going to be something with the effect of not something that you have to give your life to. It's like that's becoming a huge turnoff. I remember even kind of saying that when we were playing and covering New World. I said, I think that the next wave of MMOs will be more mid-lane, more approachable. Like people that loved MMOs when they sort of exploded are now married, they've got kids, they have careers, and they can't play EverQuest or World of Warcraft for 16 hours and then, slam down caffeine and then go crash. Like we have life rhythms that just don't allow for that. So that I think is another lesson for live service games to learn. Like people can't give their life to this, because you and I were there with Destiny, and now it's like I don't want to do that anymore. I want to have a game where I can kind of play it more piecemeal.
Yeah, I don't want what Destiny did, where if you don't play the season, then you don't know the story, right? I would rather have a thing where they have a story, and if you download it or pay for it or whatever it is, it's there. It's always there for you to go back and play to keep coming back for the game. But if it's that FOMO where the story's only here, then I'll just wait for it to all come out on YouTube and then watch a video. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what that skit that one of the users said, I think his name was Matt, sent me that skit where the guy's like, "Oh, I'm going to work my other job," and he's like, the dreaded FOMO, like I must, because like the guy's like, why are you doing this? He's like, oh, the FOMO, and I don't know, I feel like FOMO gets thrown around similarly to like pay to win. It's like, I don't know how you have live service games or live service events without there being at least some level, do you think, do you think there are acceptable levels of FOMO and then there's like unacceptable levels? Because like, how else do you make something cool and exciting that's like, hey, come do this thing for the weekend, but you don't have to, it's like, well, where's the novelty and the excitement then if it's like, nothing is really...
If you're doing holiday events and stuff like that, sure, like it's a limited time event, like cool, you get a cosmetic, you can get it some sort of skin by doing the event. Those things are fine. But if it's story beats and you take them out of the game, or it's almost like watching any kind of Marvel thing now. Like if I go to the movies and watch the next film, but I didn't watch the TV shows, right? Am I gonna know anything that's going on in the movie? Right? If I didn't watch WandaVision or Miss Marvel, I don't even know who these characters are, and then I'm gonna go watch the Marvels, and I'm not going to know anybody what it is, right? So those are like, you have to go back and watch these things to get more out of this content. That's not FOMO. That's, we made good content, and I take that back because Marvel has not made good content, but they made content, okay? And then if you want to watch this content, you have to go invest your time into this and then get more out of the thing that they're putting out. Where if it's just FOMO, like, yeah, sorry, you missed out on the story. There's no reason to play the game anymore. It's like, but these are major beat points. Why would I didn't have time. I had a kid to raise, or I had to go to school, or I had to go to work. I have a job, right? Like,
right.
Those things are different than holiday event this weekend. Do the candy insert, whatever what was that event called in Destiny where you had to put the candy, make the candy or whatever the goddamn thing was?
It was the cookie. It was the cookies for Christmas, wasn't it?
The cookies.
Oh no, there was candy for Halloween, wasn't there?
Halloween, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had to get all these things just so you can get the gun, but then the next year was the same gun. It's like, why am I doing the exact same thing again? 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row.
Yeah, that was when I broke. There was a very distinct time where I was trying to get an ingredient from a lost sector, and it was on the where was the place where all the Scorn were? The shores, the Forgotten Shores, was that a place you could go to? I can't remember anymore.
Yes, Forgotten Shores was a thing in Destiny. Yes, I don't.
There was a lost sector where you like went up an elevator.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
it was like one of the best ones, and I killed this guy 20 times or something, and I couldn't get the ingredient to drop. And I was like, I remember putting the controller down. I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore, man. Like, it's like, it's so silly. I feel like it's a job. Like, I feel like I'm, it's a homework assignment. And I remember people being like, Tangled Shore, thank you, the Tangled Shore. I remember people being like, he's done. He just can't do it anymore. And it's like, I think every live service game, this isn't unique to Destiny.
Yeah.
I think every live service game, you hit that point where you're like, I'm done. It's a breaking point, And I wonder if that breaking point is one of the reasons there is this distaste. There's this animosity. Like, oh, live service games are terrible. And it's like, well, did you burn yourself out on one? Did you get really tired and annoyed with some other company? Because there are plenty of games that are treating the consumer well, and they're still going, and they're celebrated. So I do wonder if that breaking point is one of the reasons we see such a strong aversion to it, and it contributes to the bias of, live service is the devil. And it's like, well, yeah, because the devil burned you, right? So you think every game is him.
See, I've changed my ways over the years. I love live service games. I just don't like the way that they do live service games. They're missing the potential of what a good live service game could be. Instead, they make it a job. And then that's when it exposed, like you just said, like you hit that point. You're like, it starts to come a realization. You're like, oh, I'm doing the same thing 50 times in a row just so I can get this thing. And you're like,
right.
I'm kind of done with this. Yeah.
Right. It was different too when you'd be like trying to get a weapon or something, because I think that was something tangible that would then impact my experience for the future.
Right.
But a freaking cookie that I'm going to give to some NPC, I'm like, brother, I'm not waiting around for some, fake ingredient that's going to disappear. Like, I'll do this. I'll grind like this for a weapon, because then I'm going to use the weapon. I'm going to play content with it. It's a cookie, man. And I'm a grown man. I'm a grown man talking about baking cookies in a video game. Now you got me feeling weird. It's like that Bill Burr skit. He's like, do you want a cookie? And he's like, well, I don't want to say I want a cookie. Now that you asked me that I want a cookie, nobody wants to say they want a cookie. Well, I don't want to say I'm baking cookies in a video game, right? Unless it's Cooking Mama. But you know what I'm saying. Don't leave me out here like this.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I hated doing that stuff. I hated doing all that type of stuff. Yeah, I agree. Eclipse, Marvel Heroes was one of the better games, and obviously it wasn't popular. That's why they closed it down.
Yeah.
Wasn't popular enough. They weren't making enough money.
Well, guys, this Friday was very different. We've not done a Friday like this, I don't think, really ever. I had planned to play Modern Warfare 3 Zombies. They pushed out like 100 gig update, and I was like, what? And so I turned my PlayStation on, and it was like telling me it was going to take an hour and 40 minutes, and I'm thinking, oh, it'll speed up. It never sped up. So there was supposed to be a first stream today. I was supposed to stream and do Zombies and then come here with Mike. So that was just one of those things where I have a commitment in the mornings on Fridays, and I come home and I'm thinking, I don't have a monologue to write. I'm just going to play some Call of Duty. Let me go turn this on. And it just was not going to work. So I was going to be able to play for like maybe 30 or 20 minutes and then have to quickly set this up with Mike. But every Friday, you have 2 opportunities to get extra content as a member. Tonight is community game night. You guys earned it. I'll do a members post about it. Get Fortnite downloaded and updated. We're going to do the OG map. We're going to do no build. It's super fun. It's laid back. It's casual. Don't tell me you hate Fortnite, okay? No build OG Fortnite is a blast, and that's what we're going to do tonight. So get your Fortnite updated, and ready to go. We've been talking about that most of the week. But right now, we're going to go to a VIP segment. So if you're at the higher level of support, if you're at VIP or higher, we only do this once a week. It's not taking members' content away from you, because, again, tonight is a members-only stream for all members, gifteds and the like. So if you guys want to gift a bunch of members right now to bring people with us or let them come tonight, you can do that. If you want to upgrade to VIP, you can do that. While you guys are doing that and getting ready to shift gears, I need you to listen to Mike, because Mike's got a channel. It's linked below. You can click his name. He does talk show style format. He does a show with his brother. Check him out. Mike, what's kind of content they can find?
So I'm live Monday through Thursday, 10 o'clock in the morning until about noon Eastern. We cover 3 topics. We have chat is 100% part of the show, back and forth between me and chat. It's not what Lono does, though. It's not like a debate back and forth. It's more of a you're hanging out with buds. Yeah, we're all just talking about gaming news and whatnot. It's like what he does after the main show, right?
Right.
Where he just kind of, that's what I do for my main show. We also do uploads from those shows. So if you don't want to watch the live shows, you can watch the breakout videos of those. We do live gameplay. I'm playing RoboCop right now. I'm absolutely loving RoboCop. RoboCop is such a fun, good game. And then we do a podcast to finish out the week called Generation X Gaming, which goes over a few of the top stories from the past week, and we rant along the way. We're trying to hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. That's my goal. So if you like what we do, if you like what I just talked about and stuff, come on over, hit that subscribe button, and appreciate it.
Yeah, guys, check him out. He's linked below in the description. Ross Erickson says, you both are my favorite Destiny talk show hosts. Thanks for the discussion. You haven't been getting...
I haven't played Destiny in 3 years.
You haven't been getting much. You haven't been getting much of that. Like, that's loyalty. He's like, I wonder when are they gonna start talking about Destiny again? It's been a while. That's loyalty right there, dude. He's like, I remember. That would be like somebody telling me that I'm their favorite Borderlands streamer. I'm like, dude, yeah, you've been around a long time. I haven't gone back to that game in quite a while. That's how I got my start on the purple platform. That's funny. I had to read that. That was too funny to not read. Do me a favor. If you guys made it this far in the stream, consider supporting the stream with a membership or supporting any of the sponsors below. And I'm going to spam a link in chat, and that's where we're headed. It's a weekly unfiltered VIP stream where my producer joins us, and we talk about kind of how the week went. And if you want to upgrade to VIP, do it. If you're not going to upgrade to VIP, but you are a member, man, I'll see you tonight. Basically, it's 2 o'clock my time right now, so in 6 hours, you guys can tune in tonight for the community game night. I'm going to go ahead and start the VIP stream. Thanks so much for being a VIP or higher. This is a once-a-week segment that we do that gets a little unfiltered, gets a little transparent with my friend here, Mike. Sometimes he's with us, sometimes he's not, but my producer, Creature, joins us, and it's a way to end the week. So thank you for that increased support. If you're watching the tail end of our live service debate stream, make sure you smash the like button. Maybe loop back and leave a comment. That'd be great. If you enjoyed the talk show and you've got some thoughts you want to share, maybe we didn't see what you said, you can leave that as a comment. I'm going to end that stream and bring people over. I'm going to redirect folks over. And